If you haven't been living under a rock, you've probably heard about Obsession by now. Hell, you've probably even seen it already, judging by the numbers. This thing is beating the first Star Wars movie in 7 years, which is both uplifting and depressing, but I'll rant about Star Wars another time. And yeah, it really is that good. So I just wanted to chime in and give my thoughts on this thing, because it's been on my mind constantly since I've seen it. I've even seen it twice just to help formulate my thoughts on this video. My name's Ashir, and this is our first movie review on Side B. That's right, we're doing something a little different this time around, and if you guys like this type of stuff, let me know in the comments, because I love yapping about the movies I see. Obsession comes to us from a relatively young and new film director, Curry Barker, and for this being his first big theatrical outing, it is insane just how good this movie is. Before I even get into any of the spoilery content about the plot, I want to highlight just how well this movie works on a technical level, which I think is important to do considering just how small this movie's budget was and how small the crew was. We have a lot of dimly lit, yet super focused close-up shots of our characters and the surrounding environment, as well as multiple lengthy and uncut long shots reminiscent of classic horror movies. All of this helps to build up the tension from the very beginning, even before all the weird shit starts happening. I also think Rock Burwell's soundtrack is being criminally underlooked, because his music is instrumental in setting up the movie's tone. It also has some great editing. There are a lot of jump cuts that aid in either increasing the drama or adding a bit of levity and dark humor. Yeah, believe it or not, there are some laughs to be had in this movie. Not saying it's a comedy by any means, but I was surprised at just how many of the absurd moments lent themselves to laughter in the audience both times I saw it, and it worked. Also, it cannot be understated just how good the performances in this movie are, particularly that of Indy Navarrete, who takes center stage here, but I'll get into that a little later. Speaking of later, to get into what really makes this movie one of my favorites of the year, I have to get into the actual plot, and that means spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie already, I implore you to do so first, and then come back to this video. Or you could watch it anyway, you do you, but I really think you'd be doing yourself a disservice by not seeing it and having it spoiled. To start, I really like the premise and settings we find our four primary characters in. We have these young adults working a crappy job at a local music store, some with bigger ambitions that feel stuck in a post-school life. You have the writer, the artist, the frat bro, and the closed-off guy, who's a real piece of shit. We'll get to him later. Add in some love triangle, or love square, drama into the mix, and you've got a scenario that's pretty relatable, which I think is a big part of why this movie ends up working for so many. Bear, our main character in particular, I think actually starts off very relatable, as he's got this crush on one of his friends that he's just too scared to admit, despite planning ways to tell her from the very opening of the movie. I'll say now that he's actually one of the most deplorable main guys I've seen in a movie like this. Again, I'll get to that a bit later, but I really liked how he comes across in the first part of this movie. You see instantly why he might feel for Nikki the way he does, even though in retrospect it's on a surface level. And he has the layup to say how he really feels about her, but absolutely fumbles it. The start of that moment between them outside her house is aggravating to watch, not just because he's a pussy who drops the ball, but because that's such a real moment. Hell, I've been there. Which is why I love how this movie makes it abundantly clear that despite him not having an actual real chance with Nikki, he could have ripped the band-aid off in this moment and avoided everything that is to come. Nikki clearly suspects Bear's feelings and gives him an out. And even his buddy Ian, who, yeah, is a bit of a douche himself, is pushing for Bear to tell his feelings just to get this whole thing over with, instead of dragging it out. Because in a twisted way, this movie feels like a cautionary tale of how being too closed off and afraid to commit to anything can end up ruining your life. We then, of course, have Nikki. For one, like I said, Indy Navarrete absolutely steals the show with her performance. The way she switches up her facial expressions on a whim, contorts her voice, and goes between playing just regular old Nikki to someone basically pretending to be Nikki, and the dissonance between the two is fantastic. I particularly like her first moments after Bear makes the wish. We see in real time that whatever takes over her is learning how to act, how to speak, how to portray Nikki. She has trouble with it, throwing Bear off, but is eventually able to sell it. I haven't seen Indy in anything else really. I know she's in that Superman and Lois show that I plan on watching at some point, but I'm really excited to see her career from here on out, because it's clear she's going places. And good God, does she nail the horror element here. Every little thing she does that's out of the ordinary has this feeling of uneasiness that drives up the tension in every scene she's in. Some of the standout moments for me include that night in Bear's bedroom, where she's in the shadows, concealing her changed face. Her movements, both lack thereof and when she's actually starting to move across the room, are just so unsettling. There's of course that party scene where she reads out the Hansel and Gretel passage. I love the voices she puts on when reading, and how she's staring Bear down, letting him know just how shitty he is, driving home that the real Nicky only ever saw him as a friend, a brotherly figure. I think this film is also a good example of when tried and true tropes can still be effective in storytelling, especially in a horror setting. For example, that scene with Bear and Sarah in the car. It's like immediately obvious to anyone watching how this scene is going to end. Even the framing of the shots go out of their way to make it clear that Nicky is going to appear and fuck shit up. But it's how the moment is drawn out and built up that makes it absolutely frightening when it finally happens. It's the first kill of the movie, and it's absolutely devastating because 1, it's earned by being this late into the film, and 2, just absolutely horrible for poor Sarah, while Bear just sits there and watches. Yeah, let's get into it already. Bear fucking sucks. I think this character gets the benefit of the doubt as far as the wish situation goes, for a little bit at least. Because realistically, even with Nicky acting off at first, you wouldn't automatically assume some magical wish is at play here. But once we see it click for him that the wish is real at the restaurant, with the smash cut of them in bed together and what essentially boils down to him raping Nicky, it's over. Everything that happens from here on out is on him. And despite realizing the truth of what's happened to Nicky, with him going so far as getting verbal confirmation on the phone that the real Nicky is trapped in some sort of hell state, while this thing has taken over her body, he continues to go along with it and tries to make it work. He even has the audacity to say, "What's so wrong about being with me?" when the real Nicky's voice attempts to break out and beg for a swift end to all of this. Even in his final moments, he's too cowardly and hesitant to take his own life the quick way, and by the end of it, he's permanently ruined the lives of all his friends. A great thing about this, though, is that the movie sets up how shitty of a person Bear is before the wish is even made. I still maintain the relatability he holds in the first chunk of the movie, however, that's on the surface, because when you take a closer look at him, the signs were already there. For one, I think it's a little suspicious how his grandma's sleeping pills were left out in a way that a cat could get inside them. Like, these things are decently tamper-proof. Why were they out in the kitchen? He's then unable to tell Nicky about the cat until way later into the night, but immediately tells Sarah, which is ironic given how Sarah actually does like Bear and he's oblivious to this. It shows that his love for Nicky is more superficial than we realize, with how he stalks her Instagram, walks back the idea of doing something genuinely nice for her at the gift shop, and instead gets something for himself, with how he doesn't put together how odd it is that she'd be this broken up about her dad dying. Hell, we even have this brought up twice through both Sarah and Ian to show how Bear missed this obvious sign. It's shown clearly throughout how selfish his actions are. And again, even in the end, he goes out in a way that's easier for him, not what's quickest. But it's too little too late at that point. He ultimately gets off easy, leaving the real Nicky permanently scarred and ruined for life. It's a great twist on the possessive/romance stalker trope, in which she's the ultimate victim in all of this. Her autonomy is stolen, her body is used, her personality is fundamentally misunderstood by her close friend, and she is left in a state where she has lost everything. It's a miserable ending that's built up well throughout the whole movie through the character work and typical horror traditions, and that's what makes it one of the best movies I've seen in recent times. I'm really glad to see this one doing so well, especially with people around my age or younger. Horror's had a pretty good run this decade, but this is definitely one of the best movies to come out of this resurgence. So yeah, if you haven't already, go see this movie. And fuck Bear!